Hey viewers! Today, we're delving into a candid discussion about women's experiences in dating individuals who are masters at stretching their budget to its limits, sometimes even to the extreme. Let's dive right in.
Women of Reddit, what's your worst experience dating a frugal person?
This was technically before we started dating, but one of my exes is so cheap we went on holiday once, and she refused to spend money on public transportation. So she made me walk like 50-60K steps every day for an entire week. I thought my feet were gonna fall off.
I hate people like this cause they're the same people who'll be unsympathetic when your feet hurt after all that. One guy told me he has a credit card that gives 25 cents back per transaction. He uses self-checkout and does a separate transaction for each item. He also pays $400 per month in rent, despite making around $120,000 per year as a private LMFD. When I went to his house, it was infested with mice. He didn't have flooring, literally was walking around on the subfloor, and the whole house smelled horribly like animal feces. Disgusting. And he comes across as super put together and professional. It totally threw me off.
During an interesting time in my life, I lived with a millionaire for a short while, and he was one of the most disturbingly cheap people I've ever met. In all his extra spare time, he volunteered at a food bank, only to take home the food donated so he wouldn't have to buy groceries. He called himself Frugal. I hated him. His cheapness led to his death. I'm really going to have to write a book someday. I can't/don't do cheapskate/frugal people.
I used to work and volunteer at a local food bank. I lived in an affluent resort community, and we saw this periodically. You'd hear people say stuff like, "Are we sure we want to give this to poor people?" They probably wouldn't appreciate it.
Boyfriend of 3 years got into a small car accident, where airbags went off. He called me from the garage and said he decided to only replace the driver's seat airbag and not passenger's seat because each airbag was a few $100s to replace. I was the main person sitting in that passenger seat. After I heard him say that with complete nonchalance, and knowing he had $10,000 in the bank, I realized he just truly did not care about me, and couldn't be a partner.
Dating a frugal person can surely lead to some wild experiences. It makes you wonder, is it really worth saving money if it involves compromising safety or basic comforts? Let's hear more of these stories.
Well, it was mostly that he was frugal with me, but spent whatever he wanted on himself. We were married. My son and I got the cheapest of everything, asked if I truly needed items, like new shoes because mine were falling apart or my son had outgrown his, but had to have name brand everything for himself, just because he wanted it.
That's not frugal, that's financial abuse.
Did he show any signs when you two were dating cause?
Nope. When we were dating, he actually tried to spend money on me all the time. I didn't like it, because he said weird things like, "This is the time to ask me for stuff, I just got back from Iraq and you should let me spoil you, we're dating." It just made me uncomfortable, as I just wanted things to be equal. And we aren't talking little stuff either. He tried to buy me a huge CD player, showing my age, lol, a PS2, a high-end purse, and a few other things I turned down. Actually, looking back, this was always when we were out with his friends, so it's likely he was just showing off for them.
3 rooms, a light fitting in each, but only 2 lampshades and 1 light bulb between them. Yes, you guessed it, you either used your phone for light or had to transport the bulb to use the light for a 2 a.m. wee.
I dated a guy who only had 2 light bulbs in his overhead light in the bedroom of his 2-bedroom apartment. His roommate had recently moved out, and he claimed he thought the landlord was supposed to change the light bulbs. I'm guessing his roommate had been the one changing them before. He was also 33 and had never been inside a post office.
Once dated a guy who wasn't exactly rich, but had more than your average person with a hefty inheritance. Early on into our relationship, he invited 6 of his friends over on Valentine's Day, which was apparently his Valentine's gift to me, quality time with his friends, for a home-cooked meal. At the end of the meal, he asked everyone for £10 a head. I couldn't imagine ever inviting people over to my house and charging them to eat.
That happened to me too. I was invited to the birthday of my friend's boyfriend. I gave him a bottle of expensive vodka as a gift. They ordered pizza and made us all pay for it.
He ate beans on toast for all 3 meals because it's healthy and you don't need to spend loads on food. I'm British, so I'll indulge in beans on toast happily, eagerly, but for 3 meals a day, every day of the week? Nah, mate. I I ate it a lot in uni because I was a skint student. Now we're in our 40s, there's no bloody need.
He believed that mattresses and cots were a waste of time and believed everyone should sleep on the floor. I noped out of that one pretty fast.
Yeah, there was a guy a few years ago on the Frugal sub that was wondering what the deal was with people needing couches and chairs in their homes, and how it seemed to be a deal breaker for women when they came to his apartment. It's like, dude, basic comfort is not something to skimp on. That's not frugality. It's just plain nonsense.
They went well beyond frugal and into being a cheap money hoarder. They absolutely refused to pay for anything even for themselves that wasn't a dire and immediate need and begrudged every dollar they ever had to spend. So their entire life revolved around making and stashing money they weren't willing to use to improve their life at all. It was like a hoarder, but their hoarding obsession was money. They seemed like a fairly normal person when I met them as a friend of a friend, other than making themselves scarce any time it was ruined to pitch in money. We didn't last more than a couple of dates because it was pretty quickly and clearly unhealthy, and their relationship to money showed they were not mentally well.
This was my ex-husband. He hoarded money in cardboard boxes. He ended up having obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, different from OCD. Fun, guys.
Wow, reading these stories will make one wonder if frugality sometimes crosses the line into absurdity. These tales are equal parts hilarious and head-scratching. Moving on to our next comments.
Instead of getting a hotel for the road trip we were going on, he suggested we just sleep in his regular-sized car. I did not go on said road trip after this suggestion. Oh God. Someone I dated was exactly like this. Wanted to go on a road trip, using my car, naturally, but didn't want to pay for hotels, so they suggested we take a tent with us to pitch in a random field overnight in between destinations to save money on hotels. They then suggested contacting any of their friends who lived in nearby towns so that we could crash on their sofas after I was like, I'm not sleeping in a tent in the middle of nowhere. Seriously, this guy refused to go on trips to cities unless they knew someone who lived nearby who we could crash with.
We spent hours one day on the slopes, and when we finally left I was starving. I begged him to stop at a gas station so I could get something to eat, but he refused as we had food at home. It was an hour-and-a-half drive, and I felt lightheaded the whole time. We got home and he proceeded to make this obnoxious dinner of salmon and poached apples that took 2 hours. I ate like 3 granola bars while hiding in the bathroom. Gee, I hated him.
That sounds abusive. My ex-husband used to not stop on trips when I had to use the bathroom, making me wait until the destination. It's cruel to deny someone basic bodily comfort like a snack after exhausting your body all day.
I went on a first date with a guy who suggested we go to a restaurant because he had a coupon and then decided it was too far of a drive and he didn't want to spend the gas money. It was like a 15-minute drive. So then he flipped through his wallet of coupons and found one for Applebee's for free wings with the purchase of a beer. I'm not a huge fan of wings, but just thought that's great. He can get some wings for his meal. We got there and he immediately told the waitress he had a coupon, asked for the cheapest beer they had, and ordered his wings. Then the waitress looked at me and asked what I wanted, and before I could speak he tells her I'm having the wings with him and I said, actually no thanks, and ordered some food for myself, and he got visibly upset and then wouldn't speak to me and watched basketball on the TV for the remainder of the date. Then when the waitress came and asked if the check would be together, he hesitated, so I quickly asked for separate checks. Frugality is fine, but this man's financial situation was equal to my own. Bonus content. Before the date, we met at a park and he started fishing, so I wandered around until he was done and took a picture of him with his fish. Then he played his guitar at me for an hour, insisting I sing with him. I cannot sing. And on the way home, he told me women shouldn't work and belong in the home and basically told me I had a joke major because I was an art student and that was great for me, but he has to be more serious and isn't comfortable working a service job. After college.
He wasn't frugal regarding things he wanted. He bought expensive tech, leased a car, bought the food he wanted, etc. But he was an expert in slowly, discreetly making me pay for stuff like food. And manipulating other things like making me pay to live there as much as a roommate would pay. Luckily not for long before we broke up and I was out of there. He pretended to financially struggle while having a lot of money in the bank because his current job paid little and his loan was high. Which isn't my problem, of course, but he made it that. Meanwhile, I was a student. I'm not one to financially carry anyone and never wanted to do that for him, which he knew, so he made sure to be pitiful and careful and made it sound reasonable. Lazy sack of shit never painted his house properly. It was only 6-ish years old. So when I moved in, I washed and painted almost the entire thing. He barely even covered the costs. He sold his house with a solid earning a few months after. We'd broken up by then. Did he pay me for doing it? Nope. It was my first relationship and we were together 3 years. Funny how those small things can just sneak up on you without you realizing it, and all of a sudden you look back and realize they took advantage of you. I've always had a hard time demanding anything from anyone. Never again. I am very much done being too kind to people, one of many reasons I just stay single now.
These comments really shine a light on how differently people perceive and prioritize spending. It's a reminder that financial compatibility is a crucial aspect of any relationship, and sometimes those little signs of frugality can reveal deeper issues. Back to the comments.
He was wealthy, old money, and knew how to invest and made good money of his own too. Super smart, kind as a person. When it came to spending on anything though, it was crazy. He didn't get the car color / exact model / features he wanted. He wanted to get a discount on their floor model. He didn't like what he got, but was happier he got the discount. He was able to pay cash either way. Minus 19/20 dates would be walking. We would walk for hours. He would make sure we have water, so we didn't have to stop for a drink anywhere. He had work bonuses falling out of his ears, but when his sports equipment was falling apart, he would rather sew it together than get a fresh item. There was no other reason to keep the equipment like superstition or sentimentality. We were at a winter wedding, and when it was done, we left the venue. I was not dressed for winter walking, but he wanted to go for a walk, and it was romantic, so we went. I mentioned I was freezing at one point and pointed to a coffee shop, asking if we can grab something and warm up. He instead said we can just drive back and get coffee at home. He booked a trip overseas and got the cheapest overnights to the point where he was rained on one night and got food poisoning another. Because it was cheaper, he did get any souvenirs either. I want to be explicitly clear that I don't date for money. I didn't even know he had it when we met, and we dated for almost 2 years. My expectations of him never changed when I learned of his money. Even if he wasn't wealthy, I'd still be put off by most of his actions around money. Money was a factor, but not the main reason we broke up. We got along really well, but when it came to financing and any talk of money, things always got awkward. It worked better when I was a broke-arse student with no money. Back then it was easier to accept walking dates. But I was always off-put by never getting coffee. Like ever. Not a single time. I work and always have. I'm also smart with my money. I have healthy savings, but I also know when and how to enjoy what I do have. The difference was a little insane when things came down to it.
He wanted to pay the dinner bill in front of his colleagues, and then ask me to transfer him money afterwards, so they didn't see him making his girlfriend pay for her own meal. He made 4 times what I made, and was obsessed with saving every penny of that. Never again, LMAO.
I bought my own $300 engagement ring. I can't remember if he ever paid me back, but suffice it to say, we did not get married.
Went out to dinner with my ex and my best friends. He asked to split a single entry, which I said no to. Then when the check came, he asked me to split it. Also dated another guy in the past that made me pay for my birthday dinner and his meal. I've dating some losers, LOL.
I'm a guy, but I had a previous girlfriend tell me about one of her previous first dates with a guy, and when she offered to pay, he said, "Oh, in that case I'm getting a sandwich to take home too, and order another meal to go."
I recently dated a millionaire that was so cheap I had to eat off his plate. He wouldn't let me order my own meal.
His car got towed because he refused to pay for parking.
We went to happy hour at Black Angus. He ordered 2 beers. I ordered a nachos appetizer and water. He requested check split in 1/2 even though he hate my food. I paid $4.35. dumped him in the parking lot.
He asked if I wanted to go to dinner to a Hungry Horse, very budget restaurant in England, with him as he had a coupon for buy one meal get one free. He ordered 2 meals and ate them both.
With one ex who I'm still good friends with, we had to pull over during a snowstorm to stay the night in a small town. He cheaped out on the motel and the one we stayed at had original fixtures from the 50s, in a rusty, bad way, and was haunted. That's the funny story. But the worst was a guy who was obsessed with saving money and acted superior for being frugal. There were a lot of little things. I like to spend money on nice things, and he would talk a bunch of shit anytime I spent money on something for myself. He acted like it was a character flaw and told me I enjoy life too much. I also got a raise while we were together, and he told me the last thing you need is more money, implying I didn't deserve it because I already spent too much in his eyes. He would go out of his way by 30 minutes to get marginally cheaper gas at Sam's Club, and when we went out on dates where he paid, he would complain that he was overspending on me, and this was at like $20 per meal taco places. He told me I just wanted to be with someone who would shower me with money, and that I wanted to be a sugar baby, but I wasn't hot enough. It goes on and on and on. He didn't grow up with a lot of money, so he became obsessed with saving, which I get, but to lord his frugality over me and other people and act like it made him a better person, it definitely didn't, was ridiculous. Other people's financial situations was something he projected a lot of insecurity onto. And his obsession with saving was pretty bad, to the point that it probably impacted his quality of life. It took me way too long to break up with him, but I've come a long way since all.
After eating dinner, he proudly told me he'd gotten the tomatoes from dumpster diving.
Oh, there is worse. I used to know a guy who lived off-grid. I didn't date him, but in this area/community, off-grid living wasn't super uncommon, and it was also well served with stores and suppliers to enable it, and he used a composting toilet. If you're not familiar, why would you be? These work by you literally chuck the pee out like in a hedge, but the paper and solids fill a bucket that you take off when it's full, leave for some months to start to break down, then bury as compost. He used to eat tomatoes, shit out the seeds into his toilet bucket, and a few months on, his shit bucket, not anything like broken down into earth by that point, would sprout tomatoes. You know the rest.
That's a wrap on our journey through the wild and wacky experiences with frugal people. From penny-pinching antics to downright bizarre habits, we've heard quite the variety. Remember, while saving money is important, it's equally crucial to strike a balance and not let it overshadow basic comforts and relationships. Do you have similar experience with a frugal person? Let us know in the comments.